In November 17, 2004, an incredible peak would be reached that would mark a completely before and after for Dragon Ball games. On PS2, a game would arrive that more than innovative was iconic for the players. This is Dragon Ball Z Budokai 3. No, sir, that is totally unacceptable. I wanted to make the review in the Budokai HD collection to see how it was, but my reaction when listening to the opening music was so repulsive that I immediately removed it and played the classic PS2 version. The Budokai 3 soundtrack is one of the key reasons why it is considered one of the best of the genre. So here we go with the old school original. Much better. If I had to define why Budokai 3 was one of the most acclaimed of its generation as a Dragon Ball game, it would be simple. It is an excellent combination of good gameplay, good music, and great fan service. As is usual in the series, we will start with the story mode. The story mode, or rather Dragon Adventure, seems intentioned to return to its roots with the canonical story told through scenarios and dialogue. Well, in first instance, they didn't look very encouraging with only static images from the anime, but it had a navigation system for free movement between scenarios, something that I liked a lot. Sometimes it is difficult to explain, but many of us were filled with the illusion by the idea of handling our favorite characters in a hypothetically free roam space, like putting Goku in GTA, so to speak. And even though that is now technically possible, having the chance to see this back then meant a lot not only for us but also for the development of these games in the long term. Going back to Budokai 3 compared to its predecessor, the difference is that now the story was told only through the point of view of the character we choose. For this reason, more than a story mode, it can be considered a kind of arcade mode where you have to win a series of fights with the chosen character, and at the end they give us a summary of what happened with the story of that character, like what happens with each individual story of Mortal Kombat characters. It also had exploration elements that allowed you to find objects with more abilities, dragon spheres, and extra dialogues from the series. For this reason, the dynamism of this type of movement between fights gave a very cool touch to the franchise and gave us a certain air of getting into the role of the characters. In addition to this, it had first-hand elements. The way in which the characters perceive the key in the area is very interesting, something that would be seen again a few years later in different titles. Continuing with this level design for this mode, at the end of each battle you get Z points that can be added to the quality of the character you want to improve. Defense, attack, key level, the typical. For this reason, they did not stay only with that. After completing certain crucial encounters in the story, the game will reward you with unique items, which may vary between special techniques and transformations. In the same way as it was in Budokai 2, you must assign these skills in the slots that the character has available, and some skills take more slots than others. In other words, the assignment of new abilities have their background with small details from lore to the series. For example, the techniques that Piccolo learns when he fuses with Kami cannot be used if we do not have equipped the fusion transformations with Neil and with the Kami itself. After completing the story of a specific character, which may take you about 3 hours approximately, although it also depends a lot on the character you choose, if you decide to replay the story again with him, you can revisit certain scenarios where extra missions will be waiting for you, like the fights of the movies, Cooler, Broly, etc. Clearly, for us at that time, it was much more complicated to get information on how to complete the missions and characters to 100%, unlike now that you can search for a complete guide on the internet. But this made simple tasks like repeating a combat or visiting a certain point on the scenarios became something very trivial. It's not like you had a list of everything you should do. You had to find it on your own through luck and common sense. Completing this mode with some characters can take you up to 1 hour, but finishing the game in general becomes a task of more than 30 hours, and I will explain why later. Let's talk about more game modes. The tournament mode was still almost the same and the prices based on money, which makes sense. The casual duels were still there, the practice mode to perfect your combos was also still there, and the training mode continued more or less with the good bases left by the interactive tutorial of Budokai 2. Only now we did not control a single character, but in different sections of the canon history they were showing us how to play and how the new mechanics worked. The final lesson of this training is a little trolling because of how Kami described him and what it turns out in practice. It is simply the action of mocking or bragging in the middle of a fight, a dangerous action that can be easily punished as shown by Tien. The gameplay and the way the game feels in general has a very explicit improvement from the first moment. The gameplay looks so similar to Budokai 2, but it feels so different. A change that, wow, feels very good. The rhythm is more accelerated, but without exaggerating. The power of the blows you give and receive feels satisfactory. By the way, I think it's a genius detail that Explorer were put as the life and key indicators. Regarding the graphics, the improvement is not very scandalous, but some modeling and animations of attacks feel a little more polished, in addition to the model and style of the Kaioken, and I think it is the best seen until that moment. The beam struggles looked spectacular and a lot more mechanics were added to the part that made it closer to being that perfect Dragon Ball game that the fans wanted so much. The mechanic of dodging attacks when you take cover at the right moment, a move that if you did it right could make you look like a professional of fighting games. The option to teleport or make the call vanish was included. Those who have played Dragon Ball FighterZ will know what I'm talking about. At the same time, this new movement generated very funny scenarios. Dragon Rush. Sit down and get some popcorn because this is going to get long. The Dragon Rush were added as this new mechanic where you must fulfill two conditions. One is to activate your ultimate mode, which is a kind of sparking that empowers you a lot, and the second is to throw your opponent away with a powerful attack. What happens next is that the game asks you to press a button of some of the main four. Meanwhile, an animation begins to play, while your rival picks a button too. If you and your rival choose the same button, you cannot continue with the attack. Therefore, the animation is cancelled and you do less damage. There are even occasions when you can damage yourself if you miss. But if your opponent chooses a different button, you can continue attacking, up to a maximum of 3 buttons in a row to activate a special attack and do as much damage as possible. In other words, it's a rock, paper, scissors. That sounds familiar. This system, I understand why they thought it would be something entertaining, but it turns out to be something very unbalanced. Besides, we go back to the same. The skill level of each player is not being measured, but only their luck. The game leaves the consequences of this attack to chance, which in a fighting game is not the best idea in the world. However, this was let go on several occasions thanks to the funny animations and curious situations to which the characters were exposed when some ultimate attack failed. By the way, let's talk a little more about this state. And in this kind of berserker mode, normal hits do not generate any kind of reaction in you, which means you can go like a bull to cause as much damage as possible. However, this has a time limit like any boost that the game gives you, and you are stunned for a certain time after it runs out. You must check the analog to recover as soon as possible. Some objects and abilities that you get are not only used in the story mode but here in individual fights and tournaments too. You can activate this even in the middle of a combat manually with a command. And behold, the issue of the capsules. This system does not seem to me that was developed in the best way. The capsules were divided into several categories such as buffs, improvements, special attacks, ultimate attacks, and even characters. This can be purchased in the store with the money you earn in story mode, tournaments, and others. One of the reasons why many people invested so many hours in this game, according to what many of you have left me in the comments, is because this capsule system was not implemented well, and even so, it was well received. Exactly, a mistake benefited them. The point here is that even replaying the story more than 10 times and winning a few tournaments, the money is still not enough to buy even 50% of all the capsules in the game. I think it's good that a game requires its players to be rewarded, but the problem is that if that progress is not completed with the base concept you initially gave, and it is forcing the player to repeat the same infinity of times without having fights with new enemies, new conditions, something additional, you are only living on your own repeatability. When we were kids, we did not have any problem with repeating what we like hundreds of times. I came to find friends competing to see who unlocked the most characters and powers at the end of the month. That is why it is a concept that worked in its time, but I doubt very much that such success can be repeated today. Beyond all of the previously mentioned, Dragon Ball Z Budokai 3 could be one of the closest to being the perfect Dragon Ball game at that time. DIMS developed a saga of games that just got better with every new installation, the closing of a trilogy that sold more than 1.8 million copies. Do you remember what I said about the fan service at the beginning of the video? It turns out that this game came with an incredible number of costumes and skins. Nothing like this had been seen in a Dragon Ball game. The new characters included in the so-called capsules with everything and their cons were very outstanding to get, like Kid Goku, Oob, Omega Shenron, among others. In addition to this, GT characters would be seen for the first time in these games. Just having Goku Super Saiyan 4 on the cover was a turning point for the marketing of the game, and it's no joke. There were mergers and even failed mergers. Overall, we now had a variety of over 40 iconic characters from the franchise and with unique skills. The reception by the old players of the saga and the new ones was also much better than the two previous installments, with a 77 on Metacritic, a much superior performance in both critical and sales, things that allow developers to release collections like the Budokai HD collection on consoles of new generations, and a fandom of followers who will never forget what you did for them in those mythical days. However, this story does not end here. The path of the Budokai does not only go back to the PS2 and the Nintendo GameCube, it goes much further, with new proposals to explore, and I know that both you and I are willing to continue with that path. Don't forget to put in the comments what you think about this great game, and if you didn't get to try it, I hope this video has served you as a reference point. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll be watching you in the next video. Take care and see ya!